The stars are out there. We hope you'll stop by this week and pick one up for someone else who it may be hard to get here. And if you can't get here, just let us know you'd like a star. We'll email you one. We'll drop one in the mail to you. Just let us know. And thanks to Elizabeth and Luke Gowron for creating that wonderful star board, and also to Sue Whitaker and Betty DeVoe who cut out all those stars for us. Like me, I bet you cannot wait for this new year to get going. We almost have some magical thinking this time of year that, poof, last Friday, everything changed, and we got to start over with everything new, a clean slate in front of us. And if we ate the right meal that day, pork and sauerkraut, black-eyed peas and collard greens, that this would be a wonderful new year. We know that's not always true. We still have a raging, deadly, contagious virus. It's killing millions, and it's still out of control, with fears that it will just get worse. We have great hopes and reasons to rejoice in a vaccine we'll soon receive, but we still have to wait our turn. We still have food shortages and job shortages and an oversupply of anxiety, of worry, divisiveness, and mistrust. The turning of the calendar page hasn't erased any of that. But today we come with hope. We come with hope when we find it by looking up, following the star, and praying for our own epiphany in this dark world. Did you look for it too? A couple of weeks ago, they called it the Christmas star. And really, it was the planet Saturn and Jupiter in conjunction. From our perspective, with one in front of the other, it looked like a bright new star. It glowed so brightly in the sky. As far back as the German astronomer Kepler in the 1600s, some believed that when Matthew told of the Bethlehem star, it could possibly have been this same astronomical event that we saw or tried to see a few weeks ago. Now, Brad and I had been watching the sky the nights before. We saw those two bright lights, and they were getting closer and closer and closer in the sky. Even without a telescope and even without binoculars, with street lights all around us, you couldn't miss. Something was happening. The stars were getting closer and closer. A new star was coming. However, like some of you, around here on that night when we looked for it, it was all clouds. In ancient times, such heavenly movement in the skies announced cosmic interruptions, movement among the gods in the heavens, and changes in the lives of those of us on earth. Sadly, today, we don't look up at the sky very much. We have other ways to navigate. We have compasses and GPSs and, tragically, too much light pollution. So our night skies are only dark backgrounds to our well-lit places. The last time people got so excited and drawn to the heavens, do you remember? It was a solar eclipse the summer of 2017. Remember stopping everything on that summer day to go outside with your cardboard solar glasses to witness the gradual darkening of the sun. Now, we had friends and family who drove across the U.S. just to witness a total eclipse in those places of more complete darkness. Every once in a while, the heavens shout so loudly that we have to stop and listen. We have to look and look up and witness something far greater than we can explain or understand. Like ancient ancestors, we cannot ignore it. That's what must have happened to these astronomers from the East. Those learned scholars, those intellectual scientists that at Christmas time we have reduced to three guys with Burger King crowns riding a fake camel and carrying wrapped gifts. We portray them as not very smart because they seem clueless to the political drama all around them, the scheming, the paranoia of the Roman emperor, whose evil plan foreshadows this joy-filled story. When new stars emerged, they were wonders, eye-opening phenomena that could not and should not be ignored by scientists. And these wise ones took off in pursuit of more information. They were just following the data until it came and rested in its full glory over a dwelling with an infant, maybe now a toddler, and his parents. When they found the family, that eureka moment of discovery, the eye-opening revelation of the epiphany, success of their hypothesis. Here was the new king that had been announced. Now everything fell into place. No wonder the three wise ones were humbled, glad, so proud they had packed the best, most valuable symbols of their towns. And they came and they worshiped. They honored this child because they knew something had happened. They kneeled in front of the child. They prostrated themselves and touched their foreheads to the earth in humble worship. For us, it seems almost comical, these brilliant international scholars, distinguished people, magi, kings from other regions and empires, now kneeling in front of a playpen. They were overwhelmed with joy. The Hebrew prophecies of a Messiah, an anointed one from God, were new to them, yet they worshiped and gave thanks. They knew something had happened. When Matthew tells the story of Jesus' birth, it's so different from the one in Luke's gospel. Matthew has a different purpose in writing to his cosmopolitan community of new believers. There are Jewish people there who were listening and trying, as they heard about this new Messiah, to incorporate that new revelation into the faith story that had been theirs for centuries. But there were also some Gentiles in this community, people from other regions in this first century to whom Matthew was writing to tell the story of Jesus. His goal is to introduce them to Jesus as the Son of God. He wanted them all to see Jesus as the Savior of the world. So in Matthew's Gospels, we don't have any shepherds, no heavenly visitor to Mary, no manger, no angel choir. Instead, we have a comforting dream to a scared Joseph, reassuring him and convincing him not to discard Mary as his pregnant fiancée. That's what the law had commanded, but to do something new, do something bold, and to claim Mary as his wife and her unborn son as his very own child. This was the new law of grace, the undeserved love that Jesus will preach throughout his ministry. It's not abolishing the old laws, but fulfilling them in new and expanded ways. And that's what he teaches us as his disciples to do. The Magi from the East are not Jewish scholars who are searching for the Messiah. They're Gentiles. They're outsiders who don't even know the story. That's why they stop and ask for directions from King Herod. I wonder if they had a night like we had, where the clouds were all around. The star was hidden. It was just too cloudy to follow it. So they needed help from ancient documents. They stopped and they learned from the king's scholars that in that book of Micah, from this little town of Bethlehem, it was predicted a ruler was to come to shepherd and lead my people Israel. With that new evidence, the Magi head toward Bethlehem, and the star reappears. But we, the listener in Matthew's gospel, know that Herod was the wrong person to ask for directions. He's evil. He's jealous. He's murderous, like another ruler we remember from centuries ago. That Pharaoh of Egypt, the one who had ordered the killing of infants and toddlers at the time of Moses' birth. He orders the murder of all boys under 2. In that same cruel manner, this Herod orders the murder of all boys under 2 in Bethlehem. Moses escaped that genocide with the help of his mother, his sister, and a kind princess. Jesus escapes this genocide with the help of his mother and his father. We also remember that Moses, as he grows up, will lead the children of Israel out of Egypt into freedom. We know Mary and Joseph will be warned in a dream to flee to Egypt for their freedom until this Herod dies. So much similarity, so many familiar patterns of God's intervention in their lives. Moses wants us to see, Matthew wants us to see and know from the very beginning of Jesus' life that Jesus is the new Moses, the leader of Israel, the new lawgiver, and even more, the Son of God. We hear a lot about the word epiphany today. That's our word as we think about what it means to have our eyes opened Epiphany means revelation, manifestation, or my favorite definition, eye-opening. And you know what it's like. Something you have read and seen for a long time or heard, and then there's that moment when it all makes sense. Literally, it's like the light bulb goes on in your head, and everything clicks. Wow, now I get it. We watch that epiphany, especially in our children. Toddlers at play, those little ones just beginning to stand up on wobbly legs and take that first scary step and then break into a bold smile. We watch youngsters sounding out letters until it merges into a word they know. Eureka! I found it. Or maybe more accurately, epiphany means I was given the insight or the sight to finally see what's always been there in front of me the whole time. What epiphany might we be hoping for in this new year that begins with such hope but also anxiety and unknown? Can we have an eye-opening gift from God, our own epiphany, our own revelation of God's presence in our world? That's what we yearn for. I think more than New Year's resolutions, this is our prayer. And the story of the Magi, Matthew wants us to know that Jesus came for everyone, not just for the children of Israel, not just for the Jews. This story in the very beginning of Matthew introduces a theme we'll hear throughout Matthew in the words of Jesus. And we'll hear it at the end of Matthew's gospel. At the very end of Matthew's gospel, we have that great commission. Jesus will leave the disciples with these marching orders. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations. Go into all the world, baptizing, teaching them to obey all that I've commanded you. And remember, I am with you to the end of the world. You see, Matthew bookends his gospel with a story of the Gentile Magi who come and worship and adore the Christ child. And then at the end of his gospel, he has the disciples listening to Jesus, being commanded to take this gospel into all nations. This grace of God, this promise of God's strength and power is for everyone. It is for us in these trying, dark, and difficult months ahead. This epiphany is our eye-opener that God is truly with us and for us, no matter what, and no matter what may come in this new year. Now, do you remember other times in the Bible when the disciples' eyes were opened? Luke tells a story on the evening of the resurrection. It has to be one of my very favorite stories. Maybe it's yours too. Luke talks about two disciples walking on a road to Emmaus. They're sad. They're grief-stricken. Jesus had been crucified. They were mourning, grieving. They didn't believe that he had been raised from the dead. Their vision was clouded by their fears, their grief. A companion joins them, and they never know. They don't notice that Jesus is that companion. They walk along the way, talking about what they are so unsure of. And then they're invited to a meal. Jesus comes to the meal, and as he sits at table with them, he gives thanks, and he takes bread, and he breaks it. And it was in that moment, we read, their eyes were opened, and they know Jesus has been with them. They recognize him. Like Magi on their knees before a youngster, the disciples' eyes were opened, a revelation, an epiphany to the presence of Christ right in their midst. So this day, as we gather around this table, in this new year, in the midst of a pandemic, yet with hopes and our morsel of bread, muffin, a cracker, may our eyes be open in ways that only God can do. We've kept our eyes so tightly shut this last year, trying to protect ourselves and those we love. We've been afraid to breathe. We've been afraid to look around. But now let us come to this table where the Magi are kneeling, and the infant holy, infant lowly, the risen Christ welcomes us.